It should have been McLaren's night of glory, securing back-to-back Constructors titles under the floodlights of Singapore. And in many ways it was. But for Oscar Piastri, that celebration was overshadowed almost immediately by tension, anger, and a sense that something more fundamental between him and Lando Norris is broken. What unfolded in the opening laps was more than a collision. It was a crack in trust, and maybe a turning point in their title fight. You saw how it began. The team was already humming with pride, their second championship in the bag. But before that feeling could truly settle in, drama erupted. On the first lap, Lando Norris, starting 5th, lunged inside into turn 1 or turn 3 depending on reference, going for a bold inside pass on Piastri, who had qualified P3 and was leading his teammate on track. Norris had to fend off contact with Max Verstappen's Red Bull ahead. He clipped the back of Verstappen, and that jostle forced him into Piastri's line. Wheel to wheel, side to side, they banged. In that moment, Norris gained the inside line, but Piastri was shoved aside, and his trajectory was compromised by the contact. This was not subtle. The impact tore at Norris's front wing, the nose piece taking visible damage. But the consequences for Piastri were more invisible and more grievous. He dropped from 3rd to 4th, losing momentum, rhythm, and a shot at a podium that looked within reach. And his first words over the radio? Sharp. He said, "That's not very team-like, but sure." Later, "So are we cool with Lando just barging me out of the way?" The language made clear. He believed his teammate had gained unfairly through contact, something the internal McLaren ethos purportedly forbids. Now, let's be clear. McLaren's internal rulebook says this: race hard, but don't make contact with your teammate to gain advantage. That's the unwritten covenant. Yet, in this case, the conflict was immediate. The team responded cautiously. Piastri's race engineer, Tom Stallard, told him they were looking at it, but didn't promise any race-time intervention. Ultimately, McLaren decided not to reverse the positions mid-race, pointing to the fact that Norris had to avoid Verstappen. Stallard communicated this: "We won't take action now, but we'll review later." That didn't placate Piastri. Over race radio, he exploded, "That's not fair! If he has to avoid another car by crashing into his teammate, that's a pretty sound job of avoiding." What's fascinating is that Piastri had already sensed a pattern this season, that his role as title leader hasn't always been defended. In Hungary, when Piastri was clearly ahead, Norris was allowed to change strategy and overtake him. In Monza, Italy, the team instructed Piastri to swap places with Norris after a tricky pit stop situation, even though Piastri argued the slow pit stop should stand as part of race fairness. Each time, the move was justified in light of broader team management or performance logic. But to Piastri, it looked increasingly like favoritism. So when the Singapore clash happened, it wasn't isolated. It felt like the culmination of a season's worth of tensions about track position, strategic direction, and driver priority. It wasn't just that Norris forced in. It was where, when, and how. And to Piastri's view, the decision not to reverse it was a sign. The team isn't backing him unequivocally, even as he leads the championship. How did Norris see it? Strikingly different. In his post-race comments, he described the move as good racing. He said the track was slippery. He put it on the inside and had a small correction, but insisted that was all. He also claimed the contact with Piastri only came after clipping Verstappen, that his priority was avoiding a worse collision. More pithily, "If you fault me for going on the inside in a gap, maybe you shouldn't be in Formula One." He framed the contact as natural in racing, nothing more nefarious. From his angle, it was aggressive but legitimate. No internal apology, no concession, just a defense of competitive instincts. And now, let's pull back and consider the stakes. The implications for the Drivers' Championship are profound. Piastri's lead over Norris shrank from 25 to 22 points after Singapore, and Max Verstappen closed into 63 points behind him. With 6 races remaining, each point is pregnancy with possibility. That opening lap skirmish cost Piastri real track position and perhaps podium value. He finished 4th, while Norris took 3rd. That one-place swap equated to a swing in points and momentum. On top of that, later in the race, Piastri suffered a slow pit stop, losing about 9 seconds and slipping further behind his teammate, compounding the damage done by the contact early. So, it wasn't just the collision, the ripple effects were real. Don't forget, the headline moment should have been McLaren's Constructors title claim in Singapore. Locked down early with all that remains of the season. They clinched it with 6 races left, an achievement that signals dominance and consistency. But instead, our attention was dragged to internecine warfare within their garage. That's telling. What should have been unity was overshadowed by scandal. The contradiction is deliciously dramatic. So what does McLaren do now? The promise from the team was that there'd be a debrief. Zak Brown, their CEO, said, "We're letting them race," adding that they'd review it later. Andrea Stella, the team principal, echoed that though it was a tough first corner, they believe in clean racing, and said that even with the Constructors' title secured, the papaya rules won't change. In other words, maintain the same management approach. Allow internal battle, but expected mutual respect. But whether those rules can preserve harmony after a clash like this is the question. Because what's more certain is that Piastri and Norris now carry emotional baggage into the final stretch. Trust has been tested. Every overtake, every strategic call, every pit stop will be viewed through that collision lens. If there's ambiguity, Piastri may question whether decisions lean toward Norris. If Norris senses hesitancy from the team or sees Piastri pushing harder in response, it might fuel his aggression. This tension could either catalyze performance or crack relationships. Beyond just Piastri and Norris, the implications ripple to the championship as a whole. Verstappen is still within striking distance, and this internal fracture at McLaren is something he can exploit. If the two papayas weaken each other, Max can catch up, pounce in the cleanup, and spin momentum his way. Already pundits like Martin Brundle are calling it a moment that changes the ground rules. The balance of handling internal competition just shifted. Let's imagine the rest of the season now. Every McLaren versus McLaren move is scrutinized. Any contact will be framed not just as racing, but political. Piastri will want letter of law fairness. Norris will argue the right to race hard. The team has to enforce consequences, visibly and consistently, or accusations of favoritism will fester. And psychologically, Piastri may race more cautiously when Norris is close. Norris may race more aggressively, especially in ambiguous corners, to test boundaries. One more layer, the public face of each driver. Piastri's frustration over radio and press reveals a driver who expects clarity, fairness, and respect. Norris's stoic confidence frames him as a ruthless competitor. That contrast itself becomes part of the narrative. Who's right? Who's respectful? Who's ruthless? F1 loves drama, but this is bespoke. It's not external conflict, it's internal betrayal. By the time Abu Dhabi arrives, how they manage this will matter as much as outright pace. Did McLaren allow friction? Did they manage it smartly? Did they damage either driver's focus? Each internal decision could translate directly into championship points lost or gained. So did Norris cross a line in Singapore? Yes, in Piastri's eyes, and perhaps in the unwritten team code. Did McLaren err by not intervening? Possibly. They chose race integrity over immediate justice. Does this change the shape of the 2025 title fight? Without a doubt, because now the fight isn't just between McLaren and Verstappen. It's inside McLaren. And that's the kind of friction that doesn't stay behind closed doors. So strap in. The next races will be more than speed duels. There'll be psychological warfare. Every position swap might be a trap. Every wheel touch, a confession. And if McLaren can't keep the peace, they may lose not just a title, but team cohesion. But if they do manage it, if Piastri and Norris can channel this tension, they might still race out of this storm together. That's the gamble, and I wouldn't bet against how savage it's going to get.